Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is July 15th. Why do I give the date right off the bat? Because of the fact we have a lot of people listen in the future. This is the present. We're broadcasting live from 7 to 8 o'clock every morning, Monday through Friday, on 104.5 Westplex Talk, the station that knows about John Combest Rocks. John Combest Rocks. John, have you ever seen that around town?
I have, and it was kind of, a great leader at the old Monsanto once taught me all change is loss, and all loss must be mourned. So yesterday as I was driving, Brad, and I saw on an RDS display on Westplex 104.5 a sign that says John Combest Rocks. And before I celebrated, I took a minute and I said a prayer for Gutter Duck. And thankfully, because I was in West St. Louis County at the time, sounds of an organ came through from KFUO and played a little bit of a morning for Gutter Duck. But yes, Brad, if you travel, thanks to Brad Hildebrand, if you travel through the Westplex, Franklin County, Warren County, St. Charles County, St. Louis County, you will see a sign on Westplex 104.5 on your dial that says John Combest Rocks. And I haven't fact-checked it yet, Brad, but it might be true.
John, how did that make you feel when you saw that? Did you think all those bad things I said about Brad, they're gone? I'm never going to say any nasty thing about him again. I'm never going to criticize him or make fun of him. Or anything.
I didn't think that at all.
Oh,
in fact, I thought ahead, Brad, because I thought when Brad changes this, I guess we'll have to say John Combest got the rocks off.
If you don't know what we're talking about, I switched. John was giving me grief about the gutter duck. And by the way, there's a whole story behind the gutter duck thing, which is, once again, another one of these disappointing stories that, a guy who, Shelly and I met with the guy, and oh my God, I can do this, I can do that, and I do this, and I do that. And it turns out he closes up shop and leaves town. His things.
Well, but Brad, but let's talk about this for just a minute, because I've been to the Westplex Talk. I've been to Westplex 107.1 on YouTube, and you actually didn't you do some actual ads for the Gutter Duck people, or do they have their own thing?
No, we did some ads for him. I mean, it's
so how did you leave that up on the RDS for so long?
John, it gets complicated. I switched processors because the processor that I had on KSOQ, I moved over to Westplex because it was a better processor. It's designed more for music. That's what it was. And I see. Okay. I moved the processor that was on Westplex over to KSOQ, and then I flipped them back and forth. So in other words, the processor that's on Westplex 107 right now is the old KSOQ processor, which is optimized for music, and the processor that used to be on Westplex, which was a good processor, but not as good as the other one. I know this is not making any sense.
Hey, I'm glad I asked the question. So in other words, it's not a big deal. But yeah. Gutter Duck is no longer? You can't hire Gutter Duck to do your gutters anymore?
John, have you ever met with somebody who you meet with them and they go, oh my God, I'm doing this, and I'm an expert at that, and I'm making so much money at this.
I do know. I have. Brad, I've worked in politics a long time.
Right.
Of course I have.
And then all of a sudden one day they leave town and everything that they claim was doing so great is just gone. I'm going like, okay, if this was such a moneymaker and you were so successful, why did you leave town and just shut everything down? It's not like they sold it. They just shut it down. But that's a whole nother
story. Did they
go
to Palm Springs? Are they operating out of Palm Springs now?
John, I'm in that age group where there are a couple things I'm getting tired of. I'm getting tired of people telling me they play pickleball. I mean, I'm just to the point where...
Unless they're coming to you and telling you that in a cute little pickleball dress, you don't want to hear it.
Yes. And B, I'm tired of hearing people say, I'm moving to Florida. I'm so tired of that. Once again, you're in Florida right now. The smart people are like Trump that's got a place down south and down north. And when it's hot in the summer, he goes up north. He's at Bedminster, wherever the hell he's at. And when it's cold in the winter, he goes south. But the people who move down Florida full time, if you think it's hot and humid here, go down south. You know what I'm saying? Go down to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Sarasota. Well, it's not so bad because you get some of the Gulf breezes there. But if you're on the east coast of the United States or the southern tip or Key West, it's just humid as hell, right? Because
yeah, it makes St. Louis seem like a dream vacation. Brand, you're sounding a little bit like a boomer. And today, as we get into story number 3, a gentleman corrected me who heard us talk on our show about how he is a boomer, and he wanted me to know he is not a boomer. Maybe if we get into the top 3 today, we could talk about that.
And John, interesting, I heard from somebody yesterday that we talked about on the air. It was like, kind of funny. Okay, that's John Combest, Combest. You need that name spelling because you have to type into your computer, your smartphone, your tablet, johncombest.com, Combest, johncombest.com. He puts together this incredible list of all these important stuff that you should know about. It's like the Drudge Report before it went south, which now the Drudge Report kind of sucks because, as I heard yesterday, it was bought by some left-wing group, and now they're making fun of Trump all the time. But anyway, it's like the old days of the Drudge Report, but for the state of Missouri. And we started off with this guy. Your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we count down John's top 3. And guess what? If we're counting down to John's top 3, what do we start with?
Up a notch to number 2.
No, we start with this one.
In third place,
You asked a great question yesterday, Brad. You said, hey, with this latest round of Kehoe bill signings, is he pretty much done until next year? That's a great question. And I mentioned, Brad, I said, well, lawmakers will come back in September for veto session. They may override vetoes. They may not override vetoes. But something quite timely happened yesterday, Brad, and it has to do with a September concurrent session. So in other words, Speaker John Patterson a few weeks ago suggested that when lawmakers come back in September for their annual veto session, ostensibly to have a veto session, but really to raise some money and get their per diem, etc., he might suggest that they take up actually fixing property taxes. And you remember in the special legislative session that Governor Kehoe called, lawmakers passed something about property taxes, but it only applied to certain counties and not other counties. There is a committee called the Missouri House Special Interim Committee on Property Tax Reform. And I mention it today, Brad, because the first meeting is tomorrow in Jefferson City at the state capitol. There will be a number of these meetings throughout the state. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And right here in the St. Louis area, at the center of Clayton next month, which is on, by the way, Gay Avenue, pause, folks can come in and essentially kvetch about property taxes, but also give their ideas on, hey, why is my county included or why is my county not included? I also mentioned this today, Brad, because this was the topic. A gentleman who was on the committee, a guy named Darin Chappell from down in Rogersville, Missouri. That's the southwest part of the state. He was guest hosting a radio show yesterday, Mornings with Nick Reed on KSGF. And Darin was talking about the concept of property taxes. More specifically, why does our government tax both our income and property we already own? Brad, when we quibble about things like what should the personal property tax rate be, and should it apply to real estate or actual cars, or should we incrementally lower it, or should we eliminate it already? Darin's point is, why as a society do we say the people that go out and work and then consume things and buy things and own property, why are we taxing those folks, Brad? That's a philosophical question. Do you have an answer?
John, because we have to have nice parks. That's why it's all about.
We do, Brad. Coming from a man that doesn't appreciate Klondike Park.
Right.
But
Okay.
Darin asked the philosophical question, Brad, which is, why shouldn't we just tax, for example, consumption? So if you go out and you buy a hot dog and a hamburger, or you're Brad Hildebrand and you buy 3 biggie bags a day, why shouldn't we tax that consumption rather than tax something like you go out and you buy a boat or you save up and you buy a house? Why are we taxing people who do the right thing?
John, this can be very easily solved because of the fact that all you have to do, and I think we have a guy who's in our listening range right now who would agree with me 100%. What you should be able to do is on your personal property tax and on your real estate tax, every single day you need to file a receipt with Dave Schatz, so that at the end of the year you get your money back. But what you have to do is you have to drive to Franklin County Courthouse in Union, Missouri, and you have to file that every single day. And if you miss one day out of the entire 365 days, you don't get your money back. But if you're there every single day, you file a report that, you divide your real estate tax by 365, and every single day you file a receipt that you paid that property tax on a daily basis. You get your money back at the end of the year. What do you think, John?
That sounds pretty fair. Yeah, and the best part about that for Franklin County is that because they observe so many holidays, it would be physically impossible for you to be there every day. So you really can't win, Brad.
John, duh. Well, you didn't get that to begin with?
No, I'm a little bit slower than you are, Brad. And also, speaking of slow, I want to get to the correction. Darin Chappell, I was at an event last week, Brad, and Darin Chappell corrected me on something I said on the show that was incorrect. I said, Brad, that you would love the man because he is a fellow boomer and a fellow cranky curmudgeon boomer, when in fact, Darin corrected me and said he is a member of Gen X. And as you and I have defined on the show before, Brad, Gen X are folks that are born between 1965 and 1980. So I stand corrected. And I also love the fact that Darin Chappell can take a little bit of a joke. He can tap him a little bit and, poke fun at the fact that sometimes he acts like a boomer, like a Brad Hildebrand type, but he's actually Gen X. And as he said on a show yesterday, he pointed out that he corrected me on that. And he said, hey, just because I have white hair and a white beard doesn't mean I'm a boomer.
And see, here we go again. If you wouldn't have given me the definition of Gen X, I would have not known those years. I say again, we should make it simple, and everybody gets a 2-digit code, and essentially, the first digit is the decade you were born in, and the second digit. The first digit is the century you were born in, and the second digit is the decade you were born in. For example, I would be a 9-3. Which means I was born in the 1990s and I was born in the 30s. So I'd be a 9-3.
Yeah, that's Brad. I have a tough question you've never answered on the show. If you were, according to your kayfabe birthday, you were born in 1935.
35, yes.
But what high school did you go to? Because Hazelwood High School was not around then, Brad.
I went to Hazelwood High School in 53.
Oh, wow. Okay, but so before it was born, before the high school was built, you went to those grounds and you had your own class there.
John, there was a Hazelwood High School in 1953. Trust me,
I don't think there was.
Yes, there was. Matter of fact, the Kirby Junior High, to give you an example of this, Kirby Junior High was the second Hazelwood High School, and that high school was built, I believe, in like 58 or 59. Or no, hold it. It was earlier than that.
You have to backdate that to be consistent.
No. It was born, but no, I'm saying it was the second.
It was the second. And where was the original one, Brad?
It was out in Hazelwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just general Hazelwood.
Yeah. No, but see, way back when, up in North County, a lot of the munis had not, once again, when I was born, there was no blackjack.
That's okay. That's a good point. Okay, with 5 minutes left, let's get to the next two stories.
Okay.
Up a notch to number 2.
A story brought to us by Michele Hot Cross Munz. The headline, WashU's plans for its long COVID clinic leave struggling patients worried about their care. Brad, do you ever suffer from brain fog?
About 24 times a day, every hour.
Yeah, so I think you're a candidate to pretend that you have long COVID. Miss Munz details an excruciating detail the travails of people who pretend that they have, or who claim that they have, something called long COVID. It's people that got COVID and then nobody cared about COVID anymore. But then now they have long COVID. So they have brain fog. A lot of them say they have like neuropathy. Like, oh my gosh, my hands feel a little crazy ever since I had COVID. So they pretend that long COVID is like a real thing and that it deserves sympathy and things like that. In short, Brad, the WashU Clinic says that they are shutting down. They had been studying long COVID. They had been providing care. People could come in and talk about their feelings about, what it was like to have this brain fog and whatever. According to WashU, plans to close the clinic were spurred because the leading physician's spouse got a job out of state. So this woman was like, I got to go. My husband got a job somewhere else. I'm leaving. And apparently, Brad, federally, there's not a whole lot of people willing to put investment into, quote, long COVID. And as we get to the very end of the story, we see that the real kicker here is that, politically, there's not a lot of support. This woman says, we continue daily to embody a public health crisis that the world has politicized and largely turned its back on. So maybe when Fauci is here for the liberal speaker series thing, maybe people can ask him this question, Brad. Is long COVID real? Should we dump more money into people who have brain fog? Hopefully people will ask him that question.
Well, maybe they'll forget to ask him that question because they have
Maybe
long COVID.
They'll forget, Brad. That's a great point. By the way, our friend Greg Keller on X did a masterful job yesterday pointing out the fact that Fauci is coming to town. Will any law enforcement officers press him, to use a Gen Alpha phrase? Will they press him a little bit? Will they get in his face and say, hey, pal, you should be arrested for COVID crimes?
I would. If I had a badge, I'd say, dude, hands behind your back unless you're Mary Lou Retton, and then we have to handcuff you in front. And you're going to the Gray Bar Hotel. What do you think, John?
Boy, Brad, when it's 7:20 and you're talking about your desire to handcuff Mary Lou Retton, I know it's time for story number one.
The number one.
Yesterday on the Mark Cox Morning Show, State Representative Tricia Byrnes from Wentzville was on, and she was talking about RECA. Now, last week when we talked about RECA, Brad, I arrogantly declared that maybe we were done talking about RECA for a while because our long national North County nightmare had apparently been solved, right? We got RECA funding. As pointed out by both St. Louis Public Radio yesterday, St. Louis on the Air, as well as the Mark Cox Morning Show, there are now scammers running around town with fake forms saying, ooh, sign here, you finna get your money. Okay, just give me $1,000 up front. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole lot of scammers in North County that are trying to get people to sign up and fill out fake forms and maybe put down a down payment. And the promise of just sign here and give us a little money and we'll make sure that you get your RECA payout. The point is, Brad, going back to the Mark Cox piece, Tricia Byrnes says that on August 9th at the Spencer Library in beautiful St. Charles County at 10 a.m., she has convened a panel of folks that are experts on RECA payouts to take a look at what's possible, what zip codes are going to get paid out, what the apparent timeline is in real time, probably how to avoid scams like I just mentioned. So that is August 9th. And if you go to Tricia Byrnes' Facebook page, you can see the other folks that are involved. You can sign up in advance and get more details about that August 9th event.
John?
That was in your Brad's top three.
No, it was not.
Okay,
I'm going to
good.
read you something. The Hazelwood School District was formed between 1949 and 1951 by annexing 13 rural school districts. The district was formally established on December 10th, 1949. I graduated.
I stand corrected, Brad.
From Hazelwood High School in 1953, John. And once again, the interesting part of it is Kirby Junior High. You went to Kirby, right? Didn't you go to Kirby?
I did go to Kirby. I was a Kirby Cougar.
But they were K-Hawks when I was there.
I know they were.
The Kirby Junior High was the second Hazelwood High School, and at the time, back in the early 60s, the kids that went to school there thought they were hot stuff because you know what road the Hazelwood High School was on?
I would say Dunn Road.
But back in the day, that was Route 66.
No way. Get your kicks on Route 66.
Right. Literally, that was Route 66 because what became Dunn Road essentially ultimately was the old Route 66, which went across North County and ultimately went across the old Chain of Rocks Bridge into Illinois. And the crazy thing about it is, if you go back in history, some people will say, well, no, Route 66 wasn't in North County. Back in the day, to confuse people, there were multiple Route 66s through the St. Louis area. It gets very complicated, but once you got out of the St. Louis area, and it became one Route 66, but Watson was Route 66, and across North County was Route 66. And I think one point in time, Lindbergh was actually designated as Route 66. How's that for useful knowledge, John?
Yeah, I stand corrected there, Brad. So Hazelwood, according to your kayfabe birthday of 1935, the Hazelwood School District was in existence when you graduated from high school.
Yeah, once again. But see,
again.
See that, but they consolidated and see the interesting thing about this is if you see these district names to this day, they'll say, like, I think it says Hazelwood School District R1. You know what that means?
Yeah, it means most of the kids that went there in your era had mental retardation.
No, it means reorganized into one. That's what it means. Because they took...
No way, Brad.
Yes, they took these 13 districts and they made it into one. Hazelwood School District R1. And so that's what the whole thing's about. See, John, you just got to talk.
Why? But the reason I don't know this was not included in the YouTube classic Board of Education.
There was a lot of stuff in there, but not that. Okay, I have an incredible top three coming up. John, are you ready for that?
I can't wait to hear it, Brad.
Are you pumped for top three?
I am
As
so
matter
pumped.
of fact, I once again will do a 3A and a 3B, okay?
I can't wait.
Okay.